Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne with you on this Tuesday college football basketball blitz, all college. We'll be with you the next 2 hours as we are Monday through Saturday, www.sidelines.live. Also, 680thefan.com, the podcast park in Atlanta, and Kicks 96.3 in Alexander City, Alabama, Lake Martin, beautiful shores of Lake Martin, and other stations as we're slowly but surely building a Sidelines Southern Sports Network. We are talking about college all the time, 12 months a year. We are a sports radio show and podcast. That's what we do. That's who we are. And you can follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Great lineup today. Starting off batting in the leadoff position, David Schultz, the Sultan of the Sunbelt, Q's Nation lifer down in Mobile, WNSP, the first all sports FM station format in America. Second segment, we'll be joined by Dan Mathews, executive producer of the Southern Sports Today with Chuck Oliver over in Atlanta. Top of hour number 2, Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, covers Georgia, two-time national champions now, talking three-peat. Can it be done? Well, we're going to find out because they got to play the schedule. And in the fourth segment, ESPN Coastal, Ben Troupe, Gator All-American, 5 years in the NFL, gives his unique perspective, as all of our guests are able to do. And again, you can follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. David Schultz, there is a lot of stuff happening right now.
Well, first off, good morning, Rob. When do you report to Paris Island? Because it's obvious, and it's taken me a week. You've obviously signed up for the Marines. All right. Thank you for your service. That's really the only excuse that you have. I would be going with that.
It's I'm on the 90-day sabbatical. I will recover quickly. I'm taking a poultice to make it grow. But
you shaved it again, didn't you?
No, I did not. I did not. I did not. No, not at all. I'm no more birth control haircuts as I'm trying to avoid it. I'm giving it up for 90 days.
Lent.
Yeah, for Lent. That's right. As my dad always says, I'm giving up pheasant under glass. But
right.
That's always a good one. But David, college basketball, I think we're seeing down here in the SEC that as competitive as we are in football, we're getting really competitive in basketball. When Kentucky was talked about as, they're circling the drain and going downhill, Calipari, and we all say it, he has so much talent up there. He's got that massive contract. Not that A&M has won like they have, but Jimbo has a massive contract to buy out as well. But this Kentucky team, and I think you pointed it out to us last week, has a lot of older, experienced players on the roster. And looked like Tennessee and Kentucky were separating themselves, or Tennessee and Alabama. But Tennessee and Kentucky played Saturday, Thompson Bowling Arena. Kentucky goes in. It has a statement win against Tennessee, ranked number 5 in the country. Your takeaway on that is all cured? Everything's just okay, no problems at all at Kentucky? Or is this just the way it's going to be with SEC basketball, and maybe there's not a great team other than Alabama, and I'm sure we'll say that until they get beat?
Well, that's a good question. I think that was a one-off. I do think Kentucky's got to be better than the way they played. All right. I mean, they got embarrassed by Alabama. It's one thing to lose to Alabama, on the road. It's another thing to get blown out by Alabama. And then it's another thing to lose at home to South Carolina. I mean, that's just bad. All right. For whatever reason, it's just not working, and it seemed to work a little bit better against Tennessee. Tennessee had all kinds of issues. I mean, let's be honest. Tennessee lost because they couldn't make a layup. I mean, they missed layup after layup after layup. And so that was an issue. It's a good job by Kentucky. I don't know if, Calipari said after the game, we just took their phones away. And so they're going through withdrawal on the next day, but just focus on Tennessee. Maybe it's as simple a solution as that. I know I'm addicted to the phone and the computer. I could, put that away to focus on other things. But I think that Alabama is the class of the SEC, they have their own issues to be dealing with, really tragic issues. We'll see what happens. They go to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt had a big win over the weekend. They certainly didn't allow for a letdown when they very well could have, because LSU is not a very good basketball team at all. And so, they come off wins against Kentucky and against Arkansas at Arkansas. And then, you're looking at this Kentucky-Tennessee game, and you're like, don't let up, Alabama, don't let up. And they did not. I mean, they embarrassed LSU. That's an embarrassing loss for LSU. South Alabama put up a better battle against Alabama than LSU did, right? I mean, when they're like 59, 19 or something like that, it was a brutal, it was brutal halftime score, like 59-24 or something like that. I mean, that's
12
like
or 14
pros versus college, right? That's that's not like Power 5 versus Group of 5. That's like Power 5 versus Division 3. And so, we'll see what happens. Again, nothing can be smooth, and Alabama's got to deal with the Darius Miles situation, which is just again tragic on so many levels. And we'll see what happens. With Alabama. But I happen to think they're the best team in the country. They've already beaten the number one team in the country in their building, right? It wasn't Alabama beating Houston in Atlanta or in Dallas. They beat them in Houston on campus. So we'll see what happens. And of course, this, it's not necessarily the best team, but usually the healthiest team that seems to win. So we'll see if Alabama can avoid any major injuries here for the next couple of months.
Yeah, well, you look at Alabama last year, they had the win over Gonzaga early in the season. And then we got into SEC play. They really, fell off a lot. Right. This team has beaten the number one team twice, North Carolina and Houston. So, and I think,
but North Carolina's no good.
Yeah. They've proven to be not very good. And Duke is barely in the top 25. And I just am looking around at college basketball. Coach K's gone. And now you've got second year of Hubert Davis at North Carolina. Jay Wright has left Villanova, who are, and of course, Jim Boeheim will be at Syracuse forever. And John Calipari's been at
forever, maybe this year. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then John Calipari at Kentucky. Mark Few at Gonzaga has been there 20 plus years. He'll never leave there. I mean, he's built a culture there that is really strong, but they've yet to win a national championship. I'm curious, in the SEC, when you see a beatdown Alabama like that, 40-plus point margin, in the first half, this Alabama team, Brandon Miller, best player in the country, compare him to what Jabari Smith meant to Auburn last year. He was the best freshman in college basketball, one of the best players in the country, third pick in the draft. Anything they have in common that you see?
Well, they're both the same kind of player. I think Brandon Miller maybe a little bit goes to the basket a little bit more. It's not like Jabari Smith couldn't get rebounds, but he very rarely drove to the bucket. And they have two very different offenses. So Auburn's offense is basically dribble around the top of the key, pass it around the top of the key, and then let Jabari Smith shoot, basically, is what the offense was. This is much more of a motion offense. You could have seen against Arkansas, Brandon Miller, when he was dribbling a little bit too much to get a shot, it would ended up being a turnover. Whereas when he came off a screen to get his shot, he hit two in a row. And that was a 65-63 game against Arkansas. And in the blink of an eye, it was a 9-point game. They hit 3 threes in a row. It started with Noah Clowney hitting one, and then Brandon Miller hit a couple, both off of screens. So they're very similar. Is Brandon Miller a little bit thicker? I don't know. I mean, Jabari Smith, and maybe I only know this because he's on my fantasy basketball team. He seems to be getting better as the season is going on. So he continues to improve. Probably has to get a little bit thicker, a little bit stronger, because the NBA, you're not gonna be able to go by all these guys, and they're gonna be able to block your shot or contest your shot outside. Whereas you got to give them at least the thought that you're going to go to the bucket, so then you can get the shot over them. I also heard, was it Jay Billis, Brandon Miller, and they're looking at it more than me. They say Brandon Miller's release is really low, so it's a more blockable shot, I guess. So, but I think that's fixable, right? Isn't that a little bit fixable when you're that kind of height? So, very good player. The problem last year was, and not to put it on one guy, Javon Quinterly, he struggled, and J.D. Davidson just never found his role. J.D. Davidson was this great Alabama home state hero, and, one and done. He left. Been up and down, mostly in the G League, but a little bit in the NBA. He never was the one and done superstar that he was supposed to be, right? He would have these great games and then he wouldn't. And we couldn't figure out if he was a point guard or a shooting guard or someone to drive to the bucket, because he's incredibly explosive for a little guy, kind of like a John Morant kind of guy. Yeah. And he was never consistent enough to help Alabama. So they were really up and down through SEC play. So we shall see. We were talking about quickly shifting to Auburn there, Rob.
Yeah.
Go look at Auburn's schedule in February. They have a ridiculous schedule in February where they have these 3 hard games and then 3 easy games, and then they wind up with 3 really hard games. So we just noticed that yesterday because it's a different kind of Bruce Pearl team this year where they're not going to blow teams out. They're going to play it close to the vest, right? They're still going to chuck up the 30-footers that they shouldn't, but instead of trying to score 80, 85, they're going to try and grind it out and hold you under 60 points, and hopefully they score 60 to get some wins. So a little bit, we'll see. As long as they realize what they are and they adjust, that's okay. But again, that's little room for error when you're hoping to play, in the 50s and the 60s, because it comes down to 1 or 2 plays, and if the other team makes them and you don't, then you end up losing.
Yeah, and watching Auburn the other night against Mississippi State, that game was at Neville Arena in Auburn. Mississippi State was 0 for 18 from 3-point range, and you're not going to beat anybody doing that. If they're hitting, let's say,
still pretty close, they didn't lose by 20.
Pretty close. Yeah, they didn't lose by 20, and Auburn pulled away. But, and what you see with Bruce Pearl's teams is they pay attention to the details, and you think a game is over and they don't panic. That's why they're able to come from behind so much. But the fact that they're 4-1 with this team, without Jabari Smith, without Walker Kessler, is amazing. And look, you saw what Walker Kessler did yesterday: 20 points, 21 rebounds, and 2 or 3 blocks, and against the team that traded him away. I think if Auburn, of course, last year they did have those 2. They won the SEC, but they got to the NCAA tournament when they played Miami with their 4-guard lineup. They were no match for them. But it looks like SEC basketball this year compared to last year. I'm curious what you think. You heard a lot of coaches say during the regular season, this is an historically great year in the SEC. And I kept saying, I don't see it. And I was right. Look what happened in the NCAA tournament. If that's your barometer, compare this year at this point to last year at this point in SEC basketball.
Well, I mean, first of all, Kentucky loses to St. Peter's last year, right? So that's an issue. And we'll see, right? Because Auburn got to the number 1 spot and it was celebrated. And, Bruce Pearl didn't hide from it because it was a big deal. It was the first time they've ever been number 1.
Yeah. And
then they kind of fell flat. They kind of lost some games. They couldn't win on the road. They struggled to win on the road if they won a close ball game. And they fell short in the SEC tournament and in the NCAA tournament. They just couldn't get it going. And Jabari Smith kind of played like a freshman down the stretch where he was forcing some things. So let's see what happens with, Alabama, because now people are going to be gunning for them in, in the SEC, right? I mean, Vanderbilt, last year had a big win at home, but that was with, Scottie Pippen Jr. Up there. So we'll see what happens with the SEC this year. I mean, Alabama's the best team, right? And I'm a big believer in this, Rob. So there's two different sets of teams in, college basketball for me, right? And basically the top 4, unless that changes, right, have basically been the top 4 throughout the year, right? Yeah. If you get, for the most part, Rob, if you get to the second weekend of college basketball, as far as I'm concerned, you've had a successful year. Doesn't matter who you are. You get to the second weekend, that's a good year. You're down to 16. You're one of 16 teams. That's really good. The thing is, if Houston is basically number 1 all year, Purdue is number 2 all year, and Auburn ends up being, or Alabama ends up being in the top 4 for most of the season, then it's almost a little bit disappointing if you don't get to the Final Four. Winning the national championship is that's a different thing. All right. Yeah. It depends on matchups. It depends on who you're playing. I can't expect, I don't care if you're Duke or Carolina or Gonzaga or Houston this year, or Alabama, to say that they need to win the national championship is really hard. Okay. You're playing 2 games in 48 hours, so that's a thing. But for the top 4 teams, if they're the top 4 for the whole season and they don't get there, it's going to be very interesting. And again, you're going to see who is healthy and the matchups going into it. Because again, who's the 4th team? That's Purdue, Houston. Who did I miss? Kansas. So Kansas defending national champs.
2 or 3, yeah.
Kansas is the defending champs. But if these 4 teams are basically the top 4 teams for the next 2 months, and they fall short of the second weekend, if they get upset in the first weekend that ends up being a bad and wasted season. Is what that ends up being. Yeah, we're about to go to a break, but that's kind of how Auburn fans felt last year, because once you get to that number 1, your mind expands up here. It never reverts back to where it was comfortably. And so they go in there, and you're playing against the team, Miami, and Jim Larinaga, who has been coaching a long time with that 4-guard lineup. And you say, how are they going to beat Auburn with Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith? Well, they did it. They won by almost 20 points. If you're an Auburn fan last year, it was a disappointment because what you got in the number 1. Alabama fans are no different. You get that number 1 ranking. You've beaten the number 1 team twice. Granted, North Carolina's not that good. It's hard to deal with. Let's take a quick break. Rob Browne, David Schultz, Tuesday Blitz on Sidelines. More right after this. Supercuts, Rob. Break. Supercuts.
Now more than ever, it is so important to shop local and to buy American. For 60 years, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company has been on the historic Collierville Square, and we strive to sell made in the USA products when available. With over 7,000 pairs of Western boots and work boots in stock for men and women, come and see our huge selection of clothing, jeans, and accessories from top brands made in the USA. Please support local business and come shop with us at Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. God bless the USA.
All right, Rob Browne back with David Schultz on this Tuesday College Blitz. And David, looking now, interesting article. We had Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com on with us yesterday. And he said you're starting to see some breaks in the dam, which I've been predicting would happen. Franz wrote before the season, we're going to need some disasters in NIL to right the ship. And the free market will do that. But it's already coming out that wealthy boosters who are funding these NIL collectives at colleges, universities across the country are realizing what you and I and anybody with a who can fog a mirror and brain waves already knew. You can't be paying ridiculous amounts of money to 17 and 18-year-old kids and expect them not to be changed, but also they'll only do that so many times with next to nothing in terms of return on investment. Look at Texas A&M as example A in that class, ranked number 1 by every service, 7 5-stars, and already, I guess 30 more, maybe 30 or more of those guys have already entered the portal. Quite frankly, I'm glad it's happening because I hate anything that makes college sports more like pro sports. I love the NFL, NBA, that's fine. I love them. Let's keep them separate.
Okay. So so I've sort of followed what's been happening with the Florida quarterback, kind of got into an NIL deal and signed a letter, so you have the NIL deal and then you have the NLI deal. And so trying to figure out what's going on there. Again, we'll see, right, with the A&M guys, and you brought it up, Rob, is that the money guys, I don't want to say fooled the players, but, put out money that they were going to get, and then they realized it was a 3 or 4 or 5 year deal and didn't get all the money up front. All right, so that's a lesson learned for those guys. I'm not sure I would go all out and hammer you give the 17 or 18-year-olds a bunch of money. Plenty of 25-year-olds are just as stupid with a bunch of money too. All right, so it depends on how you handle it. I can imagine, handling money is difficult for anybody, regardless of your background and regardless of how you,
David,
were raised. So, I'm sure it's gonna figure itself out. But some of these coaches aren't the brightest either, so they get a bunch of money, right? So, I'm not going to take it out on the 16-year-olds or the 17-year-olds because this is something new. And we're all figuring it out. We're kind of without a net. And the NCAA is nowhere to be found. That's a problem. So, it's it'll be something that we will figure out as we go along.
He's talking. I can hear him. Yeah. David, we're having some technical issues here. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not.
I can hear you. Can you not hear me? I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay.
All right. Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
All right. Well, as far as NIL goes, okay. My take, it's nothing specific, but you're just starting to see it more and more across the country, where, there's only so many people out there that will pay and fork over a lot of money to get no return. I'm curious.
But here's my thing, Rob. I don't know what the return
South
is.
Alabama, for instance. I don't know how big their collective is. That's on
They're
smaller scale. But
right.
You look at what Auburn and Alabama and LSU and Florida and Georgia and Texas A&M. Texas A&M bragged about what they did last year. That was maybe that was a problem. But what do you see on this thing? What do you think the shelf life of NIL as we know it now is going to be?
Well, first of all, can you hear me? Because for the last 5 minutes, if you haven't, all I've talked about is your haircut. All right. I don't know if you can hear me. So apparently not. As far as these NIL guys go, again, I just don't have any problem with them making a little bit of cash. They've been not making cash for a long time, right? We even heard about this, right? We can go to the pros, right? What happens if DeMar Hamlin never plays again, right? Technically, he doesn't get the rest of his contract.
Wow.
Right? But I don't think the Bills are going to do that because all the publicity would be bad. The PR would be bad, right? And so even in the professional ranks, these players are not protected at all, right? Every sport has guaranteed money. Soccer, baseball, basketball, hockey, right? These contracts were all guaranteed except the NFL. And so now I really don't have a problem with these kids making a few bucks. I know it's only a couple of places, and I'm here by myself. All right. Rob is having all kinds of technical difficulties. We'll see how this goes. Be sure to follow my podcast, Locked On Sunbelt. You can get me at Schultz Cast as well. But I guess I'm Rob and I see differently on this. I don't have a problem with the kids making a few bucks. I really don't. All right. We're talking millions and millions, if not billions of dollars are in this industry. And the colleges are very good at spending it all. So when they say we didn't make a profit, it's because, well, the coaches get all the money. The administrators get all the money. The support staff gets all the money. The facilities get all the money. Well, we're not profitable, so, except, really you needed the $100 million building or the $150 million building? What if you did like $75 million building? What would that be? And so, again, we're going to find out the players are going to get paid, right? The players eventually will get paid. And, so it'll be interesting to see on how that goes. All right. I'm going to keep talking because I can until Rob comes back or I get a text message one way or the other. So you're listening to the Sidelines. Rob Browne has decided to improve his haircut, hopefully when he comes back. I am Dave Schultz, hosting afternoons on Sports Radio 105.5 WNSP in Mobile, Alabama, covering the South Alabama Jaguars. Oh, he was talking about return on investment. So I'm one of those guys who I don't know the return on investment. I really don't. Because outside of Bryce Young on the Dr. Pepper commercials, I don't see him. All right. I'm not on TikTok where all these influences are. I'm not on Instagram as much as I should be. Maybe that'll change here with a couple of weeks of a social media practice. So I don't see any of the social media. I don't know what the return on investment is. Some guy makes one post. If I'm not following the player, if I'm not following the player, I don't see a Bryce Young post to go to, the BMW place. I don't see it. So I don't know what the return on investment is. Personally, if it's these boosters, is the return on investment more business or a national championship? So let's take C.J. Stroud, for example. C.J. Stroud, the Ohio State quarterback who decided to go pro yesterday, which I don't think is any big surprise, although the money is back to where it was, right? It almost is, right? He's going to get like $45 million guaranteed. About a decade ago, Matt Stafford, got about the same thing, but the contracts have changed. Rob, you didn't improve the haircut, Rob. We thought we were off to supercuts.
No,
I'm disappointed.
Well, let me say this.
Disappointed. I thought you were going to start all over again, square one. But anyways, about the NIL. So let's talk C.J. Stroud, because somewhere along the way, one of those guys is going to get enough money to come back, right? I mean, I'm $2 or $3 million isn't enough, but if one Ohio State or a handful of Ohio State boosters who can afford it want to pay C.J. Stroud $15 to $20 million to come back for 1 year, and then they win the national championship, isn't that return on investment?
Dave, here's my take. Are you there?
I am.
Okay. All right. So let me say this about NIL. What I do, in addition to this show, Wealth Management, we always have the families that want to leave a lot of money or just money, period. We'll do one of two things: an age-banded trust where you get it at 25, 30, 35, 40, and an incentive-based trust. And that incentive-based trust is where you have to get a job, you have to work, and for every dollar you earn from your job, you get money from the trust. I'm not against the student athletes making money, but then again, what I have a problem with is this narrative. It's a complete lie that they're victims, that student athletes are victims. They are presented with opportunities on a platform that is supported by colleges and universities across the country that invest billions for these people. If they don't graduate, that's their fault. You can't care more than they care. And what they try to do is use the media with this song, this sad song about they're taking advantage of. That's just not true. And
they are taking advantage of. They are.
They're taking advantage.
Victim is a strong word. I wouldn't say they're victims, but they've absolutely been taken advantage of. This is not 1950 where the head coaches are making $20,000, right? No, Sean Payton in the NFL is going to get a $10 million contract. Dabo's going to make $10 million. Saban makes $10 million, which Saban could be technically underpaid. So I happen to think they are taking advantage of. What's that?
I'm saying Saban is underpaid.
Yeah, Saban is. I can make the same argument. He's underpaid and overpaid. But these guys are making, and we're talking A&M is bringing in $250 million a year. And, these guys can't get 10 grand. So, I do think they are taken advantage of, and they've been taken advantage of for a long time. I would tell you, you've been, I don't want to say duped, but you've been into this mantra that it's all for the school and all for the team. These colleges don't care if these players graduate. The only reason that they would care that they are, that they're on track to graduate is so they can play, right? They don't care. They are there to win football games, period. Or baseball games or basketball games. Graduating is secondary to most of these places. So I happen to think they are being taken advantage of, and I'm happy that they're finally cashing in. But again, I don't know what the return on investment is because I don't see the ads. Who saw anybody but Bryce Young in a Dr. Pepper commercial this year? That's it. Yeah. Which, by the way, he's pretty good at it. He was pretty good at it.
He is good at it. Bryce Young is one of the most marketable. He's very marketable. But here's my argument against it. As far as the graduate, I know people like you do at different universities, and they absolutely do care. And they get really upset when student athletes will go out and say that they were taken advantage of because they're not. I know the tutors, I know the academic resources that they invest at places like Auburn and Alabama.
But that's not necessarily to help them graduate. That's to help them play on Saturday. The graduation is a byproduct of that.
Well, I understand that. Again, Wimp Sanderson said it best. How many of them graduated from your basketball team? As many as wanted to. And we've got to stop. Here's my problem.
Well, I understand that.
When you're 18,
I understand college sports is a great opportunity for some. I do. But because they're only, 2% of the whole thing goes pro, right? What happened if let's put it this way. What happened if DeMar Hamlin happens in college? Then what happens?
I'm sure that the universities have insurance policies to take care of that.
Yeah, but what happens okay, so they pay for him to get better, and then what happens?
Well, you know what? He's in college. It's different. What about a regular student that's a pre-med student who gets hurt before they graduate from medical school? They're never going to make the money if they're injured and they're incapacitated and they're not able to go to medical school. That's the same thing.
But they're not. How'd they get hurt? They didn't. Did they get hurt performing the medical student
no,
thing?
They got hurt,
on the field for somebody.
In a car wreck.
Right. Well, I mean, that's okay, but that's on them. All right. That can happen to anybody. But again, we're talking about, DeMar Hamlin. And again, is he going to have insurance when his contract is up? Is he done with football? That's on the NFL, and they negotiate that. But if a DeMar Hamlin happens in college and does he have insurance for the rest of his life for what he did for Auburn or Alabama? Well, you're going to tell me, well, he could graduate. They'll pay for the rest of his education, but that doesn't take care of the insurance, right? So, I think these kids are taken advantage of. I understand that they are, I'm a big believer, Rob. I see a lot of guys, and I don't particularly like this. They are given opportunities to not necessarily play at the highest level of football, but get really good educations. Yeah. But then they take a step back to be able to play football at a lower level, and I frown upon that. I think that's a very short-sighted thing. I saw somebody, back in Lafayette have a chance to go to Harvard. He was going to Harvard and then ended up in Conference USA at not nearly the same kind of school that a Harvard degree would be. And he's not going pro, but he wanted to play college football. And he wanted to play closer to home. So, that is a different story. And yes, I agree with you. These are great opportunities for a lot of kids who wouldn't necessarily be able to get into school or, graduate from college. So yes, But at the same time, I don't have a problem with many of them making a few bucks. Very, very few of them are making, generational money. They're going to have a little bit of a nest egg when they get out of college. That's it.
Well, I understand it, but they're not.
And then they're going to hire you to handle their wealth. That's what's going to happen.
Well, and I'm going to make them live like they're making $50,000 a year. But I'll tell you this. This came in from Jethro Toll, one of our listeners out in, Lincoln, Nebraska. Jethro Toll. If only 2% go pro, then scholarship athletes need to take advantage of the educational opportunities provided them. They are not victims. Well, I'll also say this.
I know they're not a victim.
But it's just like people.
I don't think they're victims.
Yeah, but I didn't say you. I know you didn't say that, but that's the way they're portrayed. Here's another one. Here's another one that we see. The 18, 19-year-old kid who's from a wealthy family. He knows he has a trust fund. Then he inherits that money at 21, and he pisses it all away. $5 million, $10 million, whatever, on drinking, drugs, and partying. Is that it's on you, sua sponte. You've got to take responsibility. But no, Dave, I'm getting multiple compliments saying, without a doubt, David Schultz is the most knowledgeable basketball guy. Dave,
Rob, all I really care about is that my hair is better than yours. That's really all that matters. And there is no argument.
Mine is growing back.
We can disagree on a whole bunch, and we disagree on the transfer portal and NIL and all that stuff, but no one can argue that I have better hair than you do.
Hey, look, here's the deal. We're on a 90-day deal from January 5th. We go 90 days. I'm not getting a haircut. Don't worry. I'm not.
No. It's the other way. You need to shave it all off and start again. You need to go in the other direction. If you come down here, I still don't believe you're coming down for the Senior Bowl. We're taking you to Supercuts, and we're starting again. You got to start from scratch. We're going all football and going from there.
My NIL deal does not allow it. I can't do it.
Well.
Hey, let me say this, Dave, real quick, because we got to go to Dan Mathews over in Atlanta. But look,
Mathews can wait.
I love that.
Wait.
Yeah, he will. He is a schedule. He's like you. He is a perfectionist. But let me say, tell people how they can follow you, because we're about to have to go to a break. We got about 30 seconds.
All right, we're at at SchultzyCast, and I'm on WNSP.com, Sports Radio 1055. WNSP, you got, I get the wrong way because I'm looking in the mirror. Locked on Sunbelt. We're talking Sunbelt basketball and a little bit of the transfer portal. Actually, somebody out of Southern Miss may be going up to my Orange Tykees, which was a big-time recruit for Will Hall at Southern Miss a couple of years ago. We'll see if he goes there. Also, one of the things about the Sunbelt, Rob, is that they do like softball and baseball, so we'll be doing that as well. You can also probably find me at hashtag better haircuts than Rob Browne.
Dave, well, let's do it again next week. Thank you so much.
You got it, Rob. Be good.
Bye. You too.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here on this Tuesday edition of Sidelines. Great conversation there with David Schultz down in Mobile, college basketball, NIL. And I really am. I like those comments from one of our listeners out in Lincoln, Nebraska, home of the University of Nebraska. And NIL, these student athletes, they're not victims. They're given opportunities that most men simply could only dream of. And here we're the executive producer, Southern Sports Today, over in Atlanta with Chuck Oliver. Dan Mathews, native of Houston, unavowed Houston Astros fan, LSU fan, college football fanatic, but a pro's pro. And Dan, man, thanks for coming back on with us right now. And there's a lot happening in the college football, basketball world. And I want to get, I always like to do this when you come on there is get your thoughts, man, because you are at the tip of the spear every day from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on the Southern Sports Today app. Put it on your phone, people, talking about college football year round.
What exactly are you? I missed the first part. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I was just saying your thoughts on what's going on right now in the aftermath of Georgia winning the national championship, a two-peat. There are still those out there, and they will forever, that are going to question Stetson Bennett. It doesn't matter what he does. But right now, if you had to say who is the king of college football, it's got to be Stetson Bennett and Georgia right now. But Nick Saban and Alabama, they're going to be in the mix. They recruited well. But let's talk about the state of college football as of today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I guess first with Stetson and Georgia, I mean, pretty remarkable to be able to, finish this off and do what they did. I think that it's going to go down as one of the greatest 2-year runs in college football history for, how this team was able to do it and how he was able to do it as well. I mean, just a pretty improbable story. I'm sorry, Rob. There was a lot. You got to remind me of the last two things that you want to talk about, too.
Really just talking about, we watched when David Pollack said the statement about Georgia has wrestled control of college football and taken control. And everybody says, well, Nick Saban, you made him mad. Well, he's going to want to win anyway. Nothing's new about that. But I just think it's time people give Kirby Smart credit those people that say he's not a great coach for what's been accomplished there. And of course, we know Alabama is going to be chomping at the bits to come back for another run at a title as well.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, in terms of the Kirby hate out there, I mean, I'm not hearing it as much anymore. I mean, I think he proved through this couple of game run that team was well coached, they were well prepared, and they were ready to go. I think the biggest, probably indicator of that was how they came out against TCU. That was an incredibly well executed game plan. I mean, aside from a busted coverage that allowed for a deep ball that was underthrown but still completed and set up the touchdown for TCU, that defense pretty much threw a shutout. That was the only lone blemish in that game. And I think what showed you that this team could respond was, the drive immediately following the TCU touchdown, where you went down the field in 4 plays, nothing less than 11 yards, and completely showed them, if we play the way we're capable of, you guys have no shot. I think it even went back to, the Ohio State game. I don't think that Kirby, probably back in 2018, 2019 wins that game, maybe even 2020. I don't think he wins that game. The timeout before the fake punt won that game for them. I think if Ohio State converts that, we're talking about Ohio State as national champions right now, not Georgia. So, I mean, the recognition, learning from his mistakes, I think is huge. And yeah, I think that probably right now, after winning back-to-back, I think that he is going to get the benefit of the doubt. Just based off what I know right now. Now, there's still a lot of time left here in the off season, but as we get to Nashville for SEC Media Days, Georgia's going to be my pick to win it in 2023. Why not? I mean, the last couple of years they've been there. This last year they won it. And, I think that probably right now, I do believe that Georgia is ahead of Alabama. I don't really buy that Alabama is going to be able to continue the run that they had, because it's so damn hard to win. And it's so hard to win the way that they did for almost 10 plus years. Like, that's an incredible run. And if they have a 10-2, 9-3 sprinkled in there, that shouldn't start to show you that, Nick Saban's starting to lose it. It should make you appreciate what you had in terms of being able to see that year in and year out and have people say, oh man, I'm so sick and tired of Alabama. It really was just remarkable what they were able to do. I'm not even sure that Georgia's going to be able to do that. I mean, it looks like they're going to have a pretty favorable schedule again next year. So I guess they could have at worst a one-loss regular season, maybe even go undefeated if they're able to go up to Neyland and beat Tennessee. But, aside from that, I think it's nice to be able to enjoy the great times when you got them.
Yeah, and I think what people are going to see next year, Stetson Bennett, oh, he's only 5'10". We can't win with him. Well, you're going to have Carson Beck or Gunnar Stockton. Carson Beck's 6'4", 215. He looks the part of the pro prospect that everybody imagines a quarterback should look like. And the problem is he doesn't have the experiences in his mind and in the memory bank that Stetson Bennett has that carved him and shaped him into becoming the leader that he was for Georgia. So, yeah, next year, give people what they want. Most of the time, you'll find out they really didn't want that. And it's going to be tough. You're right, because they do have to go to Neyland next year. And I do think other than that, though, Georgia's schedule really favors them. I want to switch gears to a program just east of you, Auburn with a lake, Clemson. In my opinion, Clemson is just a different program, and they have been when they had DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback. We talked about Cade Klubnik, big high-ranked 5-star out of Texas. Oh, he's going to come in and just work magic. Well, he's still got to prove it, and the offensive line's got to get better. But with Clemson and what's going on there and the ascendance of Florida State, do you see a change of guard in terms of the power program in the ACC in the next year or two being Florida State?
I mean, I think their high school recruiting needs to get just a little bit better. But I mean, they've not only worked the portal exceptionally well, they've hit in the portal. And getting Jared Verse back, I think is absolutely huge. I mean, kind of like we just talked about with Georgia, it's kind of the same deal with Florida State. I think the key with Florida State is going to be, can you sustain this from last year to this year? Because we've seen programs in the past who have been kind of in the area that Florida State's in right now in terms of, trying to be able to bottle that success and not be complacent in that success. I think that's got to be, this probably has to be one of the hardest off seasons that team has had, because there is going to be the fight to try to keep guys motivated and say, hey, just showing up's not going to get this thing done. We've got to be able to win against LSU again to start the season. We've got to be able to try to run the table, because that's what college football is. I think that, from the Clemson side of it, I think that's part of what Dabo realized is he said, look, my method has worked. I don't fault him for keeping, his program the way that it's been with, we promote guys from within. We don't really use the transfer portal. We have a strategic approach to recruiting. I think that Dabo just kind of realizes now, look, all right, my way has worked and it does work, but I do need to make some subtle adjustments. And I think one of them was that he said, offensively, something is stagnant for us right now. Something's not working. And what is that? Is it necessarily Brandon Streeter's fault? No. But, it's also, too, at the same time, I think Dabo kind of realized, I need some fresh ideas in here, which is not unprecedented for Dabo. I brought this up on the show the other day. He brought in Brent Venables after the defense, who I believe Kevin Steele was the DC at the time.
Yes, yeah.
After they got gashed in that bowl game by West Virginia, I mean, there were other games that did that, but it was Brent Venables, who was available out there, and Dabo said, I got to switch some things up. I got to change some things. And it was hard to argue with the results when you see what Clemson's defense became under Venables. I think he's kind of hoping for the same thing with Garrett Riley now. I mean, I saw the jokes and everybody said after the game against Georgia, TCU got beat by Georgia because Georgia was just a more prepared and better team. That wasn't necessarily on coaching. They were just the much better team, and they showed it. The game plan and scheme and everything that Garrett Riley put out, it was obviously good enough to help them win 12 or 13 games, whatever they won this year. So he's a hell of an offensive mind. And Dabo realized that. And Dabo, I think, looks at what he was able to do with Max Duggan and says, I've got a young, impressionable quarterback who's athletic, who can do these things that the quarterback at TCU did. Why not pair these two up and see what comes of it?
Yeah, well, I agree with you. And you go out and you get someone with a name like Garrett Riley out of Muleshoe, Texas, man. His brother, all offense, and he's all offense. Unfortunately, Lincoln Riley doesn't get the defense and doesn't seem to emphasize it, and then that's going to keep him from winning national championships at Southern Cal. But another program, let's look down at Miami. They just announced a $100 million football-only facility is going to be built. Obviously, Luis Rojas, I think the trial lawyer that has been funding a lot of the NIL and stuff for Miami, seriously committed. But here it is, Mario Cristobal, when he was at Alabama twice in those 4 years, National Recruiter of the Year. Took a lot of that to Oregon with him, recruited some big-time talent at Oregon. Now he's doing it at Miami. They're ranked third or fourth in the recruiting rankings. They're really starting to attract the players. But this past year was a disaster on the field. How much better do you expect Miami to be this year?
Well, I mean, I think that there probably was a little bit of an adjustment period last year in terms of, trying to run off guys that you feel like don't fit what you want in your culture going forward. And also, too, I mean, look, we've seen precedent in the past of first-year coaches struggling, and then through a really good off season and just continual growth of their culture, able to flip it around in the second year. We saw progress, obviously, with Kirby at Georgia. We saw progress with Florida State. Maybe it took a little bit longer for Mike Norvell. So it can be done. I think that Mario Cristobal obviously gained a lot of confidence in his abilities when he went over to Oregon and was able to coach that Oregon program and have success over there. I think that's his number one charge. I think it's that, it's kind of what I said about just showing up. That's what he's trying to prove to his program, is he's trying to tell them, look, just being from, the 305 and representing South Florida is not good enough. Being here at Miami is not good enough. I go back to what Mark Richt told me a few years ago when I ran into him at ACC kickoff. Of course, he's the coach at Miami. And he said, the U is not the U anymore, meaning, it doesn't carry the same weight with these kids. Like, you can tell them about Michael Irvin. You can tell them about Warren Sapp. You can tell them about all these players that came through there and made that program what it was and what it maybe still could be. But, you still have those same kids getting recruited by seeing what, Kirby is doing in Athens and what Nick is doing in Tuscaloosa and what Dabo is doing at Clemson. You've got other people who are able to come in and get their attention. I just think that, what needs to – there kind of needs to be a little bit of a bunker mentality, I guess, with this. And that is, we represent not only this school, this program, we represent this area. And I think that that's something that, Mario Cristobal was brought there to do, was to kind of, I don't know, be kind of a Howard Schnellenberger 2.0 of we've got to really be able to not only represent, but take pride in what this area is in high school football, and just, developing talent and the amount of talent that comes from the quote unquote state of Miami, which of course is Tampa over to Daytona Beach and down south. So I think that's part of it. And I think that's kind of the battle that he fought last year.
Yeah, it is. And I think that what Howard Schnellenberger did was tell all these local kids that they could play, and he saw all the talent there. I like your deal about comparing him. That's the only one that you can compare him to, would be Schnellenberger, in terms of, just because you're from here, big deal. There's a lot of talented players out there. You still got to produce.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people think, you look at Texas, there's a ton of high school talent in the state of Texas. But go back over the last 50 years, there's been one national champion, and that was Texas 2005 over Southern Cal. Vince Young around right in for the touchdown. All that talent, it still doesn't matter. And money, and also the money part. Everybody's got money now, and whether it's coming from their boosters or from their TV revenue rights and all that. Dan, I know you're on a tight schedule, so let you get out before the break. If that's necessary, but let people know how they can follow you, and look forward to having you on again next week. Love that insight, because on Clemson, Miami, and Florida State, great take.
Yeah, appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at Dan Mathews, ATL, 1T and Mathews. Follow us on Twitter at Chuck Oliver Show. It's a Tuesday, so that means Dave Bartu, who's fantastic. In terms of his analytical breakdown of college football, and just not only college football, but just coaching searches as well. He is so involved in those. He's going to join us. We're also going to be joined by our good buddy Barrett Salee, who will come on and talk a little college football with us today. And Trevor McHugh from the Maize and Blue Review, as Michigan making some news, not only with players coming back, but also to the announcement that Jim Harbaugh is not going anywhere. So we'll have all of that today.
And then get that Southern Sports Today app, put it on your phone for free, folks. And right after us, tune into them. You will have college football fix for 4 straight hours. It's great. Dan, thank you so much. And we'll take a quick break. Be right back. Coming up with Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia, top of the hour. Thank you.
Kitchen Kitchens and bathrooms make a home, and the design teams at Kitchens Unlimited know how to make kitchens and baths. They know it all because they have seen it all. Kitchens Unlimited has been designing and remodeling the Mid-South's kitchens and baths for over 50 years. Check out their showroom at 3550 Summer Avenue or visit them on the web at kitchensunlimited.net.
If you have a crash, dent or ding, go to G.E. Patterson and BBG for Tom Martin's Body Shop.
Come on down to Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company, located on Historical Square in Collierville, Tennessee. Hewlett & Dunn is the second largest Filson dealer in the Southeast, stocked with Southern brands you know and trust. And a new inventory arriving all the time. Do yourself or someone you know and love a favor and visit this store. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
As an agricultural producer, no matter where you farm, minimum tillage is a primary concern each and every season. At House Industries in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, we manufacture equipment to help you maximize efficiency when planting and watering a crop. Pieces like the pulverizer, bedder roller, 3-bar do-all, and bed conditioner assist you in optimizing seedbed preparation and ultimately your bottom line. Visit HouseIndustriesInc.com to locate the dealer nearest you.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, great segment there with Dan Mathews. And again, check him out. Southern Sports Today. He and Chuck Oliver, Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. 5 days a week, the king of college football. Both of them, they are really knowledgeable. And before we go to Jordan Hill, I'll say some things. You know, I look around with what NIL is doing, and we're seeing it. Again, you look at Miami and Texas A&M, those two schools that gave out money and bragged about everybody's getting money. Both teams struggled this year. Both sub 500. And I agree with what Dan said. You talked about the great Miami players, and there's a ton of them. I mean, Warren Sapp, Vinny Testaverde, Bernie Kosar, Benny Blades, Alonzo Highsmith, Ray Lewis. Don't forget about him. Out of Lakeland, Florida, Kathleen High School. There's a long list. Willis McGahee, running back in the 2002 national championship game against Ohio State. They won it, and then they lost it 5 seconds after the game was over. A flag came out, pass interference penalty. And I know Jimmy used to say that was the worst call ever. But that being said, Miami did have a great run from 1983 to 2001, 5 national championships in those 18 years. And they played for it another 4 times or 5 times. What an incredible run. It just goes to show you how quickly you can fall out of favor. Tradition never graduates. But when you're dealing with kids who are 16, 17, 18, that are the juniors and seniors in high school that you're recruiting, they have to remember, they have to have something to hang their hat on with your program. And Miami has struggled for a while, being in the ACC. Florida State's in the ACC. There's competition. It's not the best league in the country, but it is a league that, to me, has a lot of schools with a lot of resources. I'm just not sure how committed they are to spending them on, having a national championship program in football. Basketball-wise, ACC, top to bottom, it's still the best basketball league in America. Last year, there were people who tried to say the SEC was better. It just wasn't. And it's not. I don't know if it is this year. There's a lot of basketball to be played. But last year, the ACC had 3 of the Elite 8 teams in there, Duke, North Carolina, and Miami. This year, wow, Duke and North Carolina, just a shell of their former selves. Miami, same thing. There's just 4 teams right now we're talking about: Kansas, Gonzaga, Alabama, and Houston. And again, Alabama beat 2 number 1 teams this year, North Carolina. But, you know, when you're ranked number 1 early in the season before you get into conference play and all, how much can you tell from that? You know, last year, Alabama dominated early on, beat number 1 Gonzaga on the road, but struggled down the way. And that's just how college football, college basketball especially, because you play so many more games. You're going to play 35 to 40 games if you get all the way to the Final Four. That's a lot, 2 a week, and then you get into the NCAA tournament, and you're playing a Thursday, Saturday, or a Friday, Sunday schedule. But still a lot of basketball left. And I'm not going to say Alabama is the national champion yet, but they're looking like a team that just gets better and better. Now, they do have some issues they've got to work with Darius Miles, player being charged with capital murder. That's a whole nother story. Does that pull the team, you know, one way or the other? Nate Oates, good coach, got a great team. Again, until somebody knocks them off, they're the best team in the country. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports, is on with us right now. And Jordan, man, we talked with Tony Barnhart yesterday over in Atlanta, and you know what happened at Georgia, losing Chandler LaCroix and Willick, the student athlete, and one of the support staff. That's devastating to a program. And I don't know if you were at Auburn when several players died they were at a pool party back in the summer of 2012, and then another player died shortly after that. But it was, you know, different circumstances. I mean, you know, car wreck, and they were just at a party. But young people, when you lose them like that, it's just, it can suck the life out of you. And Kirby Smart, I saw his comments yesterday on Paul Feinbaum's show, you know, already missing y'all, you know, just, I can't imagine what he's going through and the whole Athens community is going through. But, you know, Saturday you have the celebration of the national championship, and then that happens. Just goes to show you every day is a great day when you're healthy, you're alive, and don't take anything for granted, and just appreciate everything you got.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, it's heartbreaking no matter what. It's, I mean, 2 young kids,
Yeah.
Troy and Devin Willick, that you talk about. And, you know, how drastically everything changed. You know, Saturday was the parade, you know, they were all there, you know, that, you know, it was a celebration, and just how quickly, you know, you wake up Sunday morning to that news. And, you know, my heart goes out to everyone who knew them, family, friends, just because just absolutely devastating. And 2, you know, I only talked to Devin Willett maybe once or twice. And even, you know, that happens, you get that news and you kind of go numb.
Yeah.
And you wonder, you know, again, I'm not sitting here saying, you know, I knew him really well, but you just think about the impact of people who did know him well, his teammates, his coaches, just an absolute tragedy. And my heart goes out to everybody, because just so hard to lose 2 young kids like that. So, you know, dramatically, so briefly again, after everybody was together on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I've got kids that age, and I can't imagine what those, you know, my prayers are with them as well, and everybody's are. And, you know, Georgia on top of the world right now in college football, and then that happens. And then now you think, as you prepare for next season, Stetson Bennett, and I made this comment to Dan Mathews from over in Atlanta in the previous segment. Next year, you're not going to have Stetson Bennett as your pinata to beat on and kick on. You're going to have exactly what a lot of the fan base wanted. Instead, you know, the whole time, a 6'4", 215, 20-pound guy, Carson Beck, or maybe Gunnar Stockton. There's a lot of talent in that quarterback room, but you cannot replace a guy that was at Georgia, left, went to a community college, Jones Community College in Mississippi, came back. They threw rocks at him, you know, fired buckshot in the air, gone, shoo, tried to run him off repeatedly, find him a job at the pet store or whatever. And he just refused to give up. How tough a guy, from what you can tell, or guys, are these other quarterbacks? And how much will Georgia change, in your opinion, offensively going into next season?
Well, I think the biggest thing, no matter who wins this job, is going to be that they aren't going to have someone who's quite as mobile as Stetson Bennett. Now, if it's Carson Beck, he can move a little bit. He ran a little bit when he got to play, but I mean, that's not going to be as big of a weapon with whoever wins this job. And how tough are they, Rob? It's too soon to say. It's one of those things where it's until you're out there in the line of fire, you can only say so much. But they've got talent at the position. I would expect some sense of growing pains with whoever it is, especially because you're going to be losing. At this point you've lost both offensive tackles to the NFL. You could lose your center, Cedric Van Pran. He hasn't announced yet, sort of in the wake of Devin Willock dying. There's been a couple NFL announcements where they've probably put in their decision one way or the other, but they haven't publicly announced it. They kind of don't want to take the attention. But you've at least lost both your starting offensive tackles for whoever is the quarterback. So, I think they got talent in the room, but it could be one of those situations I think about when I was covering Auburn. Everybody wanted someone other than Bo Nix, and they got what they wanted, and it didn't exactly go the way they wanted. So, we'll see. I do think that they've got talent in the room, and but I think it's not going to be necessarily smooth just because whoever it is, if it's one of these three guys, will be a first-time starter. And it's just not natural. It's not like you turn on a Madden game and, all right, I'm 99 overall. This thing's going to be smooth. There's going to be bumps in the road.
Yeah, there are. And you're exactly right. And it's you're got a girlfriend in college, they want their freedom, or the other way around. The guy says it to the girl, give them what they want. Find out, I don't think I really wanted that. And that's the thing about, you're right, Bo Nix. Holy cow. And you look at what he did at Oregon with Kenny Dillingham, without, Gus interfering. It's a different world. I look also at the running back room. Georgia has one of the richest traditions of producing running backs of any college program in history. Kenny McIntosh wasn't considered to be, a rock star preseason, but he runs, and his leg drive and all as hard as any running back I can remember. Let's talk about the running back room as you head into spring.
Well, yeah, so Kenny will be moving on. He's going to the NFL, and I think he'll be a really talented back because he can catch the ball in the backfield as well as he can. But you got Kendall Milton coming back. You got Dejon Edwards, who ran really hard, especially in that national title game.
Yeah.
And then the thing that I think impresses me the most, Branson Robinson was your fourth string running back, and I think he might have had a couple touchdowns in that TCU game. You kind of lose track at a certain point once you hit a certain number on those points. But they'll be in good shape. They'll get Andrew Paul back, who was honestly, between he and Branson Robinson, he was probably having the more impressive fall camp. Winds up tearing his ACL. So he'll be a redshirt freshman, but a lot of people liked what they saw out of him. So losing Kenny does hurt because he was the best of the pass catching backs, and they used him a lot in that way, but they should be in really good shape. I thought that Kendall Milton really turned it on down the stretch and played well into the postseason, which is big because he'll be that number one back. He'll be the one that those guys count on, and they've got good talent behind him. And as we've seen through the years, you can never have enough depth at running back, and Georgia should be in pretty good shape. Also bringing in Roderick Robinson from San Diego, who will be a true freshman. I mean, he ran all over the place out in California. Very impressive back. That they don't lack for talent at running back going into 2023.
They're not. And then in this recruiting class, you're talking about Amarius Mims and Broderick Jones, the big offensive tackles that are both going to the NFL.
Warren McClendon.
Warren McClendon. Okay. But that being said, Georgia, the talent level there, if you look at the blue chip index, I talk about that a lot. You're familiar with it. The 4-year barometer of 4 and 5 stars talent you sign in a 4-year cycle. It's every year. It's Alabama or Georgia 1 and 2, or flip it. That's not going to change. I mean, Georgia it's just, these kids are just automatically, they don't recruit really. They choose. Okay. That's just my thought. Switch over to the defense. Georgia defense this year gave up a lot of points in the SEC championship game. Some of those were just late game points. They dominated early, put 50 on LSU. Don't forget that. Then you look at the Ohio State game, they gave up 41. But you get to the national championship game when it mattered, that was the biggest game. they absolutely suffocated a TCU offense that had scored 40 plus against Michigan 9 days earlier. Let's talk about this Georgia defense heading into spring. Biggest areas where they've got to fill holes. Guys come and go. I don't believe in just, plug and replace. You can't replace character, leadership, and toughness, but there's certainly a lot of talent. Here are some names you look to emerge.
Yeah, they're going to have to replace guys like Jalen Carter, Chris Smith, Nolan Smith. But, I think you look at guys like Bear Alexander, who was a true freshman who put on a show against TCU. You got your 2 starting inside linebackers coming back in Smile Munden and Jamon Dumas-Johnson, which is huge. You have to have another corner step up opposite Kamari Laster with Keely Ringo going pro. I would feel like that's probably Dalen Everett. Nyland Green will also be in that mix as well. There's a lot of questions. Probably that second safety is one of the places I'm really interested in with Chris Smith going pro. He had used up his eligibility, so he was gone no matter what. But put together a great season, was an All-American, and rightfully so. But they got to have someone step up alongside Malachi Starks. Now, will it be someone like Dan Jackson, who's a walk-on, who was starting earlier in the year, and then Malachi Starks kind of shows he's ready and steps into that role, and Dan Jackson winds up suffering a stress fracture and winds up being lost for the season. But really talented guy, and has shown that he was up for the moment throughout last season and then the 2022 season as well. So they're in pretty good shape. I think that they've got a really good youth movement on defense, like outside linebacker Jalen Walker put on a show as well against TCU, and he's a guy that was recruited as an inside linebacker, and then they had guys get banged up outside. They had to move him out there, and he looked up for the role and ready to play that role. So they've gotten a good sense, I believe, with who they want to step up in some of these roles, and that's huge because a lot of these guys leaving were truly leaders on that side of the ball. But they've got playmakers ready. It's probably just a factor of guys rising to the occasion and willing to be leaders, because maybe more than anything, obviously that production matters, but they need guys who are going to be willing to step up and kind of lead by example. And maybe that might take a little while to determine who those guys are once we get into spring.
Yeah, and spring practice comes before you know it. We won't be without college football very long. Probably at the Senior Bowl's first Saturday in February, about mid-February, somebody will start spring practice. But I look at Georgia, and they're so talented, and this schedule this year definitely favors Georgia. I mean, they do have to go play up at Neyland Stadium against Tennessee, and there'll be teams that surprise, that maybe Kentucky fulfills the dreams and the lofty expectations that they have one of these years. I mean, this past year was a big time letdown, especially with Will Levis coming back at quarterback. But other than the Tennessee game, before we go to the break, what other game are you most concerned about next year? We got about a minute.
Kentucky's one. Ole Miss at home, I'm just not really sure what Ole Miss's roster is going to look like.
Yeah.
And really, other than that, I mean, there's not one. Maybe also Florida, just because you don't know what they'll do in rebuilding this offseason. But their schedule sets up so well for them to go in and, if not go undefeated, 10-2, 11-1, probably at the worst. Again, understanding you've lost a lot of talent and you're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. But I do think it's kind of a shame that they had to take the Oklahoma game off the schedule, because that would have been a really good game, a really tough test early on. But there will be tests along the way. Like you said, there will be risers and fallers. Maybe Ole Miss has a really good season in Lane Kiffin's, return and having another year under his belt there. But that game will be in Athens, so that will help. So to me, it's probably Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida. And again, the way Georgia has been recruiting, the way they've rebuilt, those games are all kind of a little bit later in the year, and that's only going to help Georgia as they try to go make it back to back to back.
Yeah, let's hold it. I'm going to come back. I got a couple more questions for you. Jordan Hill, 24/7 Sports on Georgia.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Jordan Hill, got a question. You Auburn people were so adamant. Let's move the Georgia game because at the end of the season, mid-November, Auburn and Georgia would play. Then a lesser opponent, then the Alabama game. And in 2012, when A&M and Missouri came into the conference, instead of Auburn having Alabama at home and Georgia on the road, they put them. We have them both at home one year, both on the road. As an Auburn fan, I hate that. And I also think that by moving that game, what did you get? You get Texas A&M, who should be good, but they're not. But are they going to throw LSU or they're going to throw somebody tough? Bottom line is there's nowhere to hide. But maybe it's because Auburn is struggling and Georgia is ascending back-to-back national championships. That rivalry, and I caught myself, I was asking you, that's almost blasphemy to not think that the Auburn-Georgia game would be a big game. But that rivalry has basically been tossed out the window almost because Georgia in this millennium is 16-7 against Auburn and 3-11 since the start of the 2010 season. Does Georgia even consider Auburn a rival anymore?
I think so, and I think the kind of the beauty of Georgia football is that who fans consider their biggest rival kind of depends on where you are from in the state.
Yeah.
I grew up in North Georgia. There are a lot of people who cared a lot about Georgia, Tennessee. South Georgia people are going to care about Georgia, Florida. If you're from Carrollton, somewhere, Columbus, West Georgia, you're probably more of a Georgia Auburn fan. And I think it still matters a lot. I mean, you always see things. It's so cyclical, and we don't know how quickly it's going to happen with Georgia, but you have teams rise and fall. You have teams dominate the rivalry. There were years that Georgia dominated the Florida rivalry, and then Steve Spurrier shows up, and then Florida wins practically every game. And now it's kind of starting to go back. I mean, Florida did win in 2020. But no, I mean, I think a lot of people still care about that rivalry. I think that moving it up from November, I don't know. I'd probably have to talk to more Auburn fans to get a feel for it. I know Georgia fans don't really like it being played earlier in the year. I mean, it was played October 8th this year, and it may even be the end of September in 2023. I don't really understand why Auburn didn't flip it to where, it was away and home between Georgia and Alabama, because there was a point where Georgia went to Auburn twice after A&M and Missouri joined, and Auburn never repaid the favor on that one. I know there are some Georgia fans and probably some administration that aren't crazy that never happened. But, yeah, I mean, I do think that it's still a rivalry. And, again, I think you look at how Hugh Freeze has brought in talent this offseason. I think that they are building in the right direction. Now, are they going to be up there with Alabama and Georgia? I think that's too soon to tell. But again, with rivalries like this, you have waves. You have waves where it's all one-sided. And you just know that if you're a Georgia fan, you want to keep enjoying this because, nothing like that really lasts forever in the sport.
Yeah, and I said that parenthetically, tongue-in-cheek. I mean, but again, Auburn, I don't, that rivalry in mid-November just is cemented. And I don't know of any Auburn fans that really like the game being moved like it is now. And then, but again, Georgia so dominant in that series. And you go back to Steve Spurrier was 11-1 against Georgia. And then the Zucker, I think, was 2-1. And then Urban Meyer, I think in that 12, 15, in that 21-year period, was it Florida 17 or 18 out of 21? And you're right. It does. They go in cycles. I get that. Tennessee had just lost 15 in a row to Alabama. And they got the one win. And I was there, and all that other 15 years, they forgot about that. But Georgia, as a program and as a state, did you go back 10 years ago? Georgia was still the 4th or 5th most talent-rich state in America, but now they're putting out about 250 Division I players a year. You got Kennesaw State, you got Georgia State, Georgia Southern is getting their program. They've got Clay Helton coaching there, but Georgia Tech, they struggle. But Georgia, when they recruit, they've gone from being Georgia heavy to more of a national program, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's sort of what you afford yourself when you're able to win like Georgia has. And, you look back at like Kirby's first class, which would have been 2016. It was very Georgia heavy. And they tried to keep a lot of guys in the state. Missed on a few guys like Derek Browne, who I know Auburn fans are really grateful they didn't wind up landing him. And Demetrius Robertson, who went to Cal, he ultimately winds up coming back to Georgia. But, since then, they've done a very good job of they've been able to pick from the best talent in state and then moving outward. I mean, in that national championship game, you had two guys that played from the state of California, Kendall Milton, Brock Bowers, and then Ernest Green was a true freshman. He wasn't playing, and he's been a little banged up. But that's sort of what Georgia has afforded itself with the success it's had. It can kind of keep that in-home talent that they want, that they think can really help. They can keep them home and then kind of go out and pick the best of the best elsewhere. And it's kind of the best of both worlds for Georgia right now with how they've been able to recruit both in the state and around it.
Yeah. Jordan, looking at the basketball standings, Georgia is there at 5th right now, 13-4. Mike White's first year, 3-1 in the SEC. Talk about this team right now and what's happening in recruiting. What are some obvious changes that you're seeing, what you're hearing from coaches, high school coaches, whatever, high school players? Are they tapping into the greater Atlanta area, the 22-county, 6.5 million Atlanta metro?
Well, it's kind of too soon to tell as far as the recruiting on that front. And I think Mike White's been really honest in saying that they are going to recruit, when it comes to Atlanta, when it comes to the state of Georgia, but that they want to get the right guys, period. And a good example of that is Asa Newell, who is from Florida. He's a 5-star power forward. I've had people tell me that he might wind up being the number 1 player in his class, and Georgia's hot on him. And Jaden Newell, his older brother's a walk-on at Georgia. You would think that would help their chances. So, I don't think they've really seen the recruiting as the end-all, be-all as far as got to recruit the state of Georgia, got to get the right guys, and a lot of those guys are from the Peach State, which makes it easier. But been very impressed. 13-4, off to a great start in Mike White's first season. I think I had them at 15 wins total, so they may blow that number out of the water if they keep it up. But it got a big test tonight playing at Kentucky. I don't know that they're going to be able to win that one, but if you do beat a Kentucky team that's still trying to find itself, man, what a huge win that would be for Mike White and company.
No, look, Mike White, maybe this is where the last few years at Florida, it was all you ever heard about was he going to survive? Now he's got a new lease on life. And for now, I think he's a much more relaxed coach. But Georgia has always been that mystery. It was like Florida for years in football. If they ever get it together, Coach Bryant used to say, we'll all be fighting for second place. But listen, Jordan, I know you've got a big day ahead of you. Let people know, again, how they can follow you and keep up with you. Folks, if you don't get the daily newspaper anymore, just subscribe to whatever Jordan Hill is doing, whether it be on Twitter, social media, whatever. He is constantly updating you on Georgia, SEC, college football stuff. He is what you call a true grit journalist. He actually makes sure he gets it right versus trying to just be first. And thank you, Jordan, for doing that. And thanks for being on our show.
Absolutely. Dogs247.com, at Jordan Davis Hill on Twitter, at Dogs247. So, yeah, football content, basketball game at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. So, I want to make sure and drink my coffee, stay up late for this one, but should be a good one. Excited to watch that one.
Right. Again, our prayers are with all the Georgia people. At SEC rivalries are one thing. Real life is tops it all. But thanks so much for being with us, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
All right. We'll be back here in just a second. We're going to be joined by Ben Troupe, ESPN Coastal down in Savannah. Always love having Ben on. The best hat collection anywhere. I need to get him to wear. I need to wear my Stetson hat. Got a good looking. I got an Outback hat. That's what we got from Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. I'm gonna tell you, folks, great year for the folks at Hewlett and Dunn. You want to order stuff? They have the coolest clothing. They're the second largest Filson dealer in the southeastern United States. They've got Old South, Devil Dog jeans. What's cool about those is if you're a size 34, you wear a 32. A 32, you're a 30. You know, you get the picture. Just take off 2. You lose weight the minute you put those pants on. They've got Wrangler. They've got Outback clothing. Okay. They have STS. They have over 7,000 pairs of boots, men's and women's boots, great looking boots. My wife, Audrey, has a lot of boots from Hewlett and Dunn, great looking. Also children's boots. Okay. They are a great store. Go to hewlettanddunn.com. Check out their inventory. If you need to call them on the phone, ask for the owner, Charles Hall, or Raven Carpenter. Any of that staff there, they're great at matching you up with what you want to wear, but they've got great looking stuff. A lot of that cool stuff you see, Kimes Ranch, Rock Mount shirts. Those are those long shirts you don't tuck in, not because you're overweight. It's just the way that you wear them. But Elvis wore them. Ronald Reagan wore them. Bob Dylan still wears them. They're just timeless, classic looking clothing out there. And I know they've got a sale right now on a lot of the stuff, but the largest also massive collection of everything Duckhead makes. Okay. Great folks. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. All right. But Georgia, thinking about what Jordan Hill just said, they ain't going anywhere. That is a strong, strong program. And you think about Georgia high school football. You think about towns like Swainsboro, where Ben Troupe is from, and you think about Washington County over there, where Takeo Spikes is from. You think about all the towns in South Georgia. You think about the state of Georgia, fourth most talent-rich state in America. Ben Troupe, ESPN Coastal, is on with us now. And Ben, I'll tell you right now, we were just talking with Jordan Hill, and you being a student athlete at Florida and, of course, played in the NFL 5 years, I can't imagine what it would have been like for you to lose a teammate and Chandler LaCroix, who was also part of the recruiting staff. My prayers are with those folks over there. You got to have a strong core group of people to get through this.
My condolences to the University of Georgia football team, University family, as well as the young lady who lost her life.
Ben, I think you may have the show on in the background. Can you double check that?
Do I got the show in the back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm getting an echo, so I don't know what it is. Just make sure something. Okay, here we go. Now, go ahead.
Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear it now. We're just getting a little bit of an echo. Sometimes if you have a phone on or a double, you think that's what it is, Audrey? Okay, yeah, keep going. I'm sorry. Okay, now it's muted. Okay, yeah, Ben.
I said, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Now I was gonna say, unfortunately for me, Rob, I did have to experience that when I was in college. I didn't know the young man. He was a fullback and from Jacksonville. And he actually was running. You know, they to get the freshmen acclimated to college, they make them run in the afternoon because you got to get used to the heat, the humidity.
Yeah.
And it was one of those unwritten rules. He didn't know. And when I'm trying to make a good impression, so I don't want to tell the coaches that I'm tired. But you know, it's never ever something you get used to. I remember one of the paramedics telling me, Ben, when we put that young man on that gurney, when we put him in that put him in the ambulance, he was gone. I mean, he was, and obviously his family was really, they didn't blame the University of Florida. But we love each other because it's one of those things to where football brought us together in a way that only it could. I would have never known about different cultures or different people from different walks of life. So much so that I'm engulfing myself in them as much as they're engulfing themselves in me. And their tragedy is something, unfortunately, you know, those type of things, you know, humanize us. Because, you know, when you're an athlete, you know how, Rob, you've been in, you know, media, they don't take those titles off of us. They think that's all we are. Rob Browne, the media guy, Ben Troupe, the football guy. And it takes something tragic to think, oh, that's a person. That's a person before, during, and after. But my condolences to the whole UGA family because, like I said, I think it's great what the University of Georgia football team is doing. But when something like this happens, it kind of lets you know, hey, man, the Kirby Smart and the job he does trying to monitor 85 scholarship guys as well as walk-on guys as well as staff. But, you know, life is precious. You only get one. My condolences because, like I said, I wouldn't even want to imagine what his parents or her parents had to go get that type of phone call. And because we're in the age of social media, everything is plastered for the world to see. But my condolences to both families.
Yeah, and you hope they have a strong Fellowship of Christian Athletes core group there. I know what Chet Williams has meant to Auburn over the years, and you just look across Kirby Smart. That's being a head coach. All like you say, all the national championships back to back and all that. I'm sure that's the last thing he's even thinking about right now. But Ben, we watched a lot, you know, and we talked about. You and I have talked about your experiences at Florida and in the NFL. Man, these NFL playoffs, this is when there's nothing like the NFL playoffs. And last night I'm watching Dallas, and how many times can you tell them they haven't won a road playoff game since 1993? And we got about a minute before the break, and I watched in the warm-ups and the pregame, you know, they showed Jerry Jones and his entourage out there and Dak Prescott. ESPN, you know, goes in there for like 2 hours before the games. And you got to watch that as a fan to truly appreciate how hard these guys work. I mean, I've run 75 triathlons. I love to work out. I love to do all that stuff. And the people that are great at anything, there's a little bit of ADD and a lot of OCD to be great. And I have both of those, and it makes it easy for me to get up at 4:30 or 5 and swim and work out. I watched Dak Prescott in the pregame, the resistance bands, the stretching. I want to get your take on what an NFL game is like. Right after this, Ben Troupe will speak. Listen up, get pen and paper handy.
Hey everyone, my name is David.
And I'm Shelby McNeil. And we're attorneys with Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short, your local Auburn law firm. Established in 1959 right in the heart of Auburn, Haggard, Cleveland, Pierce, Thompson & Short has grown in response to our clients' legal needs. We're a full-service law firm focusing on the legal issues our clients face.
We take pride in providing our clients with exceptional legal services, ongoing communication, and skilled representation. If you have any questions about our services, please give us a call or visit our website today.
But anyway, Ben, let me say this too. I can't imagine. We were watching the Cowboys game. The first touchdown, extra point, wide right. Second one, wide right. Third one, wide left. I can't remember. Did he miss the fourth one?
Yeah, he missed four.
Yeah. I have been watching college and pro football for a long time. And you and I have talked about this, the long snapper, the holder, the kicker. A lot of times people don't know who the long snapper's name is. They don't know the holder. A lot of times it's the quarterback, got to have great hands. I've just never seen that happen before. What do you think may have been going on out there in Tampa? Of course, it didn't matter, but we all know in the scheme, the big, in the big picture, it's going to come down to that winning or losing the Super Bowl for the Cowboys, potentially.
Wow, that kicker, man, the nerves. And it's something you talked about before the break, Rob. You spend your entire football career, especially when you in NFL, to make it to the playoffs. Like everything you do, from off season, during the season, eating right, massages, acupuncture, all this stuff, just to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah. Just
to finally get that moment to realize, man, I don't think the moment is too big. Sometimes it just ain't your night. And for that kicker last night, that's the only, if you had to, if you pulling hands, that's the only negative you're going to take from it. But thank God, right? They're not going to get another kicker because they're in the playoff. They're not going to get another. Yeah. You're not going to go, because number one, if that kicker, the kicker you had all year is missing kicks, what you think gonna happen if a guy that was off, at home comes in? Now they'll take the money, but the pressures, no one knows the pressure of a kicker but a kicker. No one knows the pressure of a punter but a punter, because they're very, very unique in what they do. So for everybody that got a problem with the kicker, if the best guy on the field is missing, what you think the backup gonna do?
Yeah.
And so I do feel bad for him, because you know how it is, Rob. The whole kickers are football players too. We always get into that. But unfortunately, everybody has the same thing with a kicker. If he's your kicker, man, make the kick. If he's not your kicker, you hope he misses it. But hopefully, I guarantee you, it comes down to him having to make a kick to send them to the division, to the NFC Championship game. Because I will say this, I don't know who has all the most pressure on them as playing quarterback in the National Football League. It doesn't get bigger if you're the starting quarterback for Dallas. They are the most. Tony Romo is more famous for playing for Dallas than he ever going to be sitting beside Jim Nantz. And Jim Nantz, and what he does at CBS is incredible. But certain places, it's just bigger. I don't know what Tom Brady's going to do. I don't think he's going to walk away from football, but I do think he's played his last down for the Bucs.
Yeah, I won't be surprised at that. And, 45 is not old. But for 21 years, he's been doing it in the NFL. He's never had a sub 500 season. This year, they were 8-9, 8-10. That's got to hurt. I can't imagine him wanting to go out like that. But at some point, you just say, I'm going to walk away. You don't want to stay forever. But I want to get back to the amount of time. Dak Prescott, we watch him on a Sunday. You pick the quarterback, you pick the player, you pick the team. I'll focus on Dak. You're quarterback for the Cowboys. Everything you do is watched. There's nowhere you can go, nowhere you can hide. I remember him 13, 14, 15 at Mississippi State. He's out of Bossier City or Shreveport, Louisiana, but heck of a quarterback. And you look at Jerry Jones. I was talking to someone last week. When he bought the Cowboys back in 1989, I think he borrowed money from friends and pulled it together for about $300 million. I think they're worth $5.5 billion now, that franchise. Mm-hmm. And you're right about that. And you think about the pressure. Now they got an iconic matchup with the 49ers coming up. And we have Jim Tunney on the show from time to time. He's considered the dean of NFL referees from 1960 to 1991. He did the Fog Bowl with Philadelphia and the Bears in Chicago in 1988. You were a young kid. I mean, if you were watching, I guarantee you were watching. But he did the catch, Dwight Clark against the Cowboys in 1980. He was standing right there. He's done a lot of the most famous games, over 500 of them in the NFL. Now you're climbing up that ladder. What do you do if you're one of those Cowboys players? What do you do if you're for the 49ers to not get caught up and consumed in all that's happening around you? Because there's really, with social media, like you say, where are you going to hide?
You got to do your best, man, to not be selfish. And I know that's easy to say, but this is when selflessness has to come to the forefront, because it ain't about me. Look, this is where, you hear the notion of, Coach, wherever you need me, because I want to know what it's like.
Mm-hmm.
I was blessed enough to play in the playoffs one time, and it is a different. It's football, but it's a different feeling. If you are San Francisco, if you Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, doing what he's doing, that's the thing about Dak that you can never escape, right? Dak gets the legacy of Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, and Emmitt Smith, but he also gets the legacy of that's the last time they've been elite in the 90s. So if you are Dak, nothing outside of winning is going to be acceptable. Nothing. Because it's almost like with him, there is no winning unless you win. Because you know how it is, Rob. If he loses, he didn't just lose to San Francisco. He lost to Mr. Irrelevant. He lost to Brock Purdy. Forget the fact they got Debo. Forget the fact they got, Bosa, who's probably going to win defensive player, Fred Warner, who's the first team All-Pro. It becomes you America's team. Because Jerry Jones is the most recognized owner in the world because he does more interviews than the players. I mean, but that's by design, right? That's by design. And the Dallas Cowboys have accomplished what you do when you are a franchise. Hate them or love them. Dallas got the biggest fan base in America. I cannot stand them, but they are a necessary evil. But yes, Rob, I'm looking forward to a great game because when you talk about the stars in line, CeeDee Lamb, Pollard, and DeMarcus Lawrence, and Michael Parsons, and Dak Prescott, and it's just so Shanahan versus McCarthy. It's not gonna go away. But I do think that if Kyle Shanahan had the best shot of making it back to the NFC Championship game, it's going to be against Dallas because they're at home. But the NFC East got back to what I grew up watching. The NFC East used to be the best division in the NFC.
Yeah.
Teams still in it. Philadelphia, you talking about the Giants. I mean, and the Commanders were very, very, very competitive this year. They just lacking a quarterback. But Dak Prescott, I just respect him embracing what he really is. So when people see all the antics before the game and the hip thrust trying to get, hey, I'm doing all this because when he broke his ankle, I thought Dak Prescott's career was over. And for him to come back to get his new contract and to play the way he's playing, but Dak knows, man. Winning a Super Bowl for Dallas is like LeBron winning for Cleveland. That's forever, man. That's legacy that's going to surpass. Nothing against these other quarterbacks, but winning in Dallas is different. But that team out there in the Bay, man, Santa Clara, they got something to say about it.
Yeah. Looking at Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, running backs at Dallas. I watched Pollard play at Memphis, went to Melrose High School, and he can do it all. I mean, kick return, everything. That 1-2 punch at running back, I think, is who else in the NFL has that?
I don't know if there is another duo like that. And I think the thing about Zeke that people don't understand is a running back's best years when he first get in the NFL. That's usually gonna be his best year because the wear and Zeke to me has done all you can ask.
Yeah.
And Zeke has earned the love and admiration of Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Do they want to pay him that much money? No, because you got Tony Pollard, who's younger, obviously more agile, not making as much money. But I think they're going to try to get. I think this might be Zeke's last year in the Dallas cap because the cap hit is so high. But you need two running backs now. You need two different backs. I don't need the same type of guys.
Yeah.
I played in the AFC South with Fred Taylor, Maurice Jones-Drew, or when you had Jonathan Stewart, or D'Angelo Williams, or CJ2K and Lindell White. You need two guys that are built different, run different, because I don't need the same guy that will be sub in and out. I mean, with the days of TJ Duckett and Warwick Dunn and Michael Vick, the running game, you know how it is, Rob. When all else fails, hand the ball off. If everything else, hand the ball off. I guarantee you, the team that wins the Super Bowl, look at their rushing yards per attempt. Not how many rushing yards they had, because rushing the football is the mentality. It makes the game speed up.
Yep.
You go back to the Chargers and the Jags to get in field goal range. What did they do? 4th and 1, they handed off the E10. And Asante Samuels had the game of his life, but they pay you to make tackles.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you got to make a tackle, and they said 200 pounds versus 190 pounds, one play corner, one play running back, hand the ball off. And then I think they was in the same draft, both second-year players. I think this playoffs has been, I don't know what it is with these 17-point leads. It don't matter. They just get erased. But I've been very, very impressed with everybody in the playoffs. I feel bad for the Dolphins. I think it was some home going on with them refs. But shout out to everybody that's in the playoffs right now. I think it's going to be exciting moving forward. And like I said, man, a new Super Bowl champion will be crowned in 2023. We'll see what happens.
Well, you look now talking about comebacks. Jacksonville, Jacksonville and the Chargers. You got to think about the comeback in 2010. Auburn down 24-0 in Tuscaloosa. Turn out the lights, as Frank Gifford used to say on Monday Night Football. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Howard Cosell, Don Meredith, and Frank Gifford. He goes, turn out the lights, the party's over. And nobody thought that team had a chance. What does that say about the toughness of Trevor Lawrence and what he means to Jacksonville?
He showed why he is a franchise quarterback already in his year 2, because he played his worst half of football. He played his best half of football in the same game. And it also shows this. In the National Football League, I don't care what anybody says, you need 2 things to be on the same page: the head coach and the quarterback relationship. They don't got to be best friends, but Doug Peterson brings in a change of atmosphere. He's giving you a healthy working environment. He respects everybody from number 1 on the roster to number 53. And if you're the Chargers, that's the kind of stuff that sets your franchise back 10 years, because you shell shock. 27-0, it's hard to beat anybody if you spot them 20. I don't care who it is, but I think this Jags team said, look, man, we always fighting for respectability. We're not the media darlings. We're in the AFC South, right? That's headlined by the Titans, not the Jags. And I think they're the most dangerous team in the AFC because nobody expects them to be here. But you talk about Christian Kirk, you talk about everything, you talk about Zay Jones. Listen, Travon Walker, for number 1 overall pick, he's got to learn how to rush the passer consistently. And I think that's another reason why Josh Allen, Kentucky, I think they'll re-sign him maybe to a long-term deal or even franchise tag, because think about this. Tom Coughlin, gone. Doug Marrone, gone. Doug Peterson comes in, a change of pace, Mr. Khan, the owner's out the way, and you moving on to the divisional round. I'm telling you, this team could be scary because Evan Ingram's going to get a new long-term deal. He's been the X factor. And this is Travis Etienne's first year playing 1,000-yard rusher. I think they're a very, very dangerous young squad.
Yeah. Talk about Evan Ingram, played at Ole Miss, kind of that hybrid tight end receiver. We don't see a lot of those guys, but he was a special talent, and he's now getting the money for being that. But man, when you've got someone like that, that's like the running back version, the tight end version of what Pollard is at Dallas, because as a kick returner, I think he returned 6 for touchdowns. And you mentioned D'Angelo Williams. I remember watching him out of Wynn, Arkansas play at Memphis. I think he's the NCAA all-time career yardage leader. He did everything, played 11 years in the NFL. And you're right. I think the best thing for Zeke Elliott at Dallas is Pollard, because it gives him a chance to take a break. And how many years can Derrick Henry do what he's doing with the Titans? I mean, your body, as big as he is, he's out of Yulee, Florida, right outside of Jacksonville. Grew up dreaming of playing for the Gators. Goes to Alabama, but what do you have, over 12,000 yards in high school? And you look at the way he takes care of himself. Ben, got a few minutes left. You still work out, don't you? I mean, because my dad's 94. I was with him Friday afternoon in the weight room. He was riding the bike and lifting weights. He was a middleweight powerlifting champion when he was in college. But I'm like, man, it's good to have genes like that. But I would think, how old are you? 40? Are you 40 yet?
Yes.
Okay, and you've got 3 kids.
Yes.
See, that's what keeps you young.
Oh yeah, I don't know. What keeps me young is I got my kids to get on these nieces and nephews, man, because the oldest, my brother's kids are the oldest. I got a nephew that's 20 who will be 21 this year, and I got another nephew that will be 1 this year. So that's how. But at the same time, it's what you said, Rob. I tell my kids all the time, until I decide that y'all gonna be better than me in sports, I'm gonna cheat you and I'm gonna dominate you, because you will not be better than me until I decide it. And if you do beat me, nobody's there with me and you, so I'm gonna lie about it, and I'm gonna say I wasn't really trying. I don't care how you feel about it, but I will say getting older for me is a blessing, because my niece and nephews and kids really, really think I want to be them. I don't want to be y'all. Yeah, y'all got better cell phones than me to show y'all that when you break it, you're coming back over here to the galaxy. No more iPhones. You come back, but I embrace everything that I am now. I embrace the fact that I've been truly blessed in my lifetime. And you know, a coach once told me, which I live by now, he said, your life will only go as high as your exposure allows it to. So the more you're exposed to, your mind will not go higher than that. I've been exposed to so much.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm just talking to people who just haven't been exposed to as much as me. But I speak to people. I don't speak at nobody. I don't speak down to nobody. I respect everybody. And like I said, the greatest thing I ever had in my life was all the grandparents I had, the great-grandmothers, the grandfathers. That's what I get to do every single day. I can tell stories about these people every day, but if you would have told me I would have been, you know, doing what I'm doing now, Rob, I would have laughed. I would have, no, man, not me. Writing books and speaking to you, I don't know. No.
Well, that's you are, because who you are. Just like Billy Graham was so loved because he didn't put his opinions in. He just quoted directly from the gospel. And that's powerful. And I want to say real quick before we go with Ben Troupe, most often we're going to see the face of Christ in the least among us and go out and help people with the expectation to get nothing in return. Just give to give. Don't give to get. And we live in the greatest country in the world, people. Find excuses to win. Talking about what Ben Troupe is saying, what goes in to every one of these guys you see on college football or in the NFL, there is a story. And Ben, tell them real quick about your book, how they can follow you over in Savannah. And I'm looking forward to having you back on next week. You are high energy karma, and we love it.
I appreciate you having me on, Rob. I always go to BenTroupe84.com. That's BenTroupe84.com. Follow me at BenTroupe84 on all these social media sites. Gonna have a couple of new podcasts coming you guys' way. One's gonna be called This Is Our Stories, for which Rob is gonna be on. I'm gonna have to talk to Rob about it, and I'm gonna have another one called Only One Dash. That's what I'm gonna be working with these HBCU athletes. The Ed Reeds of the world, the Ed Waters of the world. I'm gonna get a chance to do that, but listen, man, just listen. If you see me online, if I'm not smiling, man, DM me and tell me, hey, Ben, man, you wasn't smiling today. I ain't got nothing to frown about. I'm healthy and strong. My daddy is 64 years old. I'm trying to catch this dude every freaking day, and I hope to look like him by the time I'm 64, man. So, you know, just loving life.
That's right. People make a difference, and you are what we love about having you on this show every week is your high energy. Let's do it again next week. Until then, folks, have a great day. We are out of here.